Hi again then guys, and welcome to another installment of Sleeper Spec on Gran Turismo 6 in particular. And for those who are maybe not familiar with this tuning series, what we do is we take a car which doesn't necessarily need to be a sleeper already, because this series title refers to the setup rather than the car. Because what we do is we take a vehicle, it could be a premium or a non-premium, it could be any type of car, and then we upgrade it in such a way that people can't tell that it's actually been modified. The PP, the power, the weight, even the look of the car is essentially 100% stock, and only the most trained eye could tell. In the case of a muscle car, you might be able to notice that it wallows around a bit less through the corners, or you might notice a car has racing brakes, for instance, but most people won't notice the difference. Now, on this particular occasion, and for this particular build, I've chosen a muscle car, as I kind of alluded to just now, the Shelby Mustang GT350. This is the premium version, in particular. You could do it with the normal one as well, and basically use the same kind of tune if you want to. I've upgraded the tyres slightly to sport softs, which immediately improves the car, of course. As I mentioned about the brakes, that is one of the only ways that a trained eye could recognise a difference. In the case of this car, I don't think you could actually recognise that though, because of the drum style wheel rims that it has. So you want to upgrade those to racing discs and calipers, of course. Then for the suspension, we've got the ride height the same as stock, 130mm, but we've stiffened up the springs just a little to 450 and 4. The dampers we've also stiffened to 4 all round. Anti-roll is on 3, which is standard for the race suspension, but that's still 2 higher than the stock 1. Camber and toe we've got neutral, as I often do. You could give it some if you want to, of course. We'll come back to the gearbox in just a second. I've gone for the twin plate clutch because you haven't got a huge amount of power to be dealing with. The carbon prop shaft. As far as the diff, I've gone for halfway on initial torque, as low as possible for both acceleration and braking, as you can see. As far as power, you want to do nothing to it at all, not even an oil change, and as far as the weight as well, of course, don't touch that either. Then for the gearbox finally, and this is another beautiful thing about a muscle car, and when you tune it in this kind of way, because the gearboxes back then were so primitive in effect, and they did not allow most muscle cars to really unleash the performance, especially top end, which they really had to offer, this upgrade really does allow that. You can get so much more top-end acceleration and top-end speed out of pretty much any classic muscle car with that one upgrade. So I've gone for an auto setting of 149, then as you can see individual gears of 3.2, 2150, 1550, 1.2 and 975 with a final drive of 3.5. So that's it overall for the tune. It's a relatively simple tune, and there is definitely some room for variation in there if you want to. But now, of course, as we always do with these Sleeper Spec builds, let's take it out to a track and see what kind of difference it can make to your lap times. Now, for those players who enjoy doing tuning like this, myself included, muscle cars, especially classic muscle cars, and I have mentioned this before, are among the best vehicles to do this kind of tuning to, because they've got so much innate potential, but because of the primitive tech which they have compared to today's cars, they don't necessarily reach the potential which they have. So when you modify a muscle car, in particular stuff like its suspension and its gearbox and its diff, you can see instant changes without even needing to drop the weight or increase the power. And I think that's probably the real beauty of tunes like this, which makes me personally enjoy them so much, seeing the massive differences which you can make to a car without even touching the engine or dropping the weight at all. Now in the case of this car, the stock lap was, as you can see, a 143.9, basically, just under. With this Sleeper Spec build, the exact same PP, the exact same power, the exact same weight, but of course slightly better tyres, sport softs, it drops the lap time to a 136.575, 7.3 seconds quicker over the course of just one lap of Laguna Seca. That is a massive margin of difference between two cars which should technically be essentially the same. So it just goes to show, as with most of these tunes, the kind of difference that suspension and gearbox tuning can make to a car with more potential. So if you do decide to use this tune, I hope of course you have a lot of fun with it, and If you'd like to check out more, of course they're in the playlist at the end of this video. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.